You know, for so many founders, there's this moment of absolute terror that just stops them in their tracks. It's that fear, that little voice that says your big idea, your new product, it's just not quite ready yet. That it needs just one more feature, a little more polish, just one more round of bug fixes before it can see the light of day. But what if that hesitation, that drive for perfection, is actually the single biggest mistake you can make? Well, that's exactly what we're going to dig into.
So here's what we've got on tap. We're going to completely dismantle this idea of the perfect launch. First, we'll talk about why launching is really all about learning. Then, we'll see how users basically become your compass. After that, we'll get super practical with how to launch the smallest possible thing. And finally, we'll tie it all together to show how this becomes the engine for real sustainable growth.
All right, let's dive right in with that first huge hurdle, the myth of perfection. This is the idea that you only get one shot to make a first impression, so you'd better make it absolutely flawless. But as you're about to see, the real risk isn't launching something imperfect. It's waiting so long that you never even learn what you should have been building in the first place.
And this all boils down to the one question that just paralyzes countless startups. When is a product truly ready? When do you finally get to hit that big red launch button? If you ask around, you're going to hear a lot of answers that sound kind of like this. You launch when it's perfect, launch when you have every single feature you've ever dreamed of, launch when you know for sure you can crush the competition, and of course, launch when it's completely 100% bug-free. Now, these all sound really reasonable, right? But they're not. They're traps. They're just excuses to avoid the most important test of all. Which brings us to the absolute core idea of this whole explainer. You launch to start learning. See, the common wisdom has it completely backward. Your real work doesn't end when you ship your product. That is the exact moment it truly begins. Let's just reframe this whole thing. Launching is not the finish line. It's the starting gun. It's the moment you stop building in a vacuum, you stop operating on just theory, and you start getting real, hard data from the real world. It's the beginning of a conversation with the only people who actually matter, your users.
Man, this quote just nails it. All those late nights, all that code you wrote, all those design sessions, that was all just practice. It was just preparation. Until your product is actually in the hands of users, you're just warming up. The real game starts the second you launch.
This is such a brilliant idea from the essay Hackers and Painters. See, the author realized that the way he was taught to program in college, where you figure everything out on paper first, was totally wrong. The reality of creating something is messy. It's about, spewing out broken, imperfect code, and then, kind of like a painter or a sculptor, just gradually beating it into shape. That first imperfect version isn't a failure. It's the first sketch.
Think about it like this. Every single line of code you write is really just a hypothesis. It's your best guess at how to solve a problem. Launching, then, is the experiment that proves whether you are right or wrong. Without that experiment, you're just making stuff up based on guesswork.
Okay, so if launching is all about learning, then who are our teachers? Well, that brings us to our next section. Users are the compass. They are the only ones who can tell you if you're actually heading in the right direction. This is such a powerful way to think about it. And wealth here, it doesn't just mean money. It means value. It means you made something that people actually want. I mean, technical elegance, clever code, a beautiful design, none of that matters if nobody uses it. People actually using your product is the ultimate non-negotiable proof that you've made something valuable.
And this slide just lays it out perfectly. A startup can really take one of two paths. On one side, you're building based on guesses, and that path is just littered with wasted time, features nobody asked for, and, solutions to problems that don't even exist. But on the other side, you've got this awesome cycle powered by user feedback, and that leads to iterating fast, finding true market fit, and solving real painful problems for actual people.
So if you want just one single clarifying metric to guide you, this is it. In the early days, just forget all the vanity metrics, forget projections. Focus on one thing and one thing only, growing the number of people who actually use your product. Everything else follows from that. It forces you to make things that people want.
Okay, so we've established why you need to launch fast, but the really big question is how. How do you actually do it? That brings us to Section 4, Launch the Smallest Thing. This is all about mastering the art of the minimal useful subset.
The process itself is almost deceptively simple. First, you build the absolute smallest version of your product that is still useful to someone. Maybe not everyone, but a small initial group. Second, you get it into their hands as fast as you possibly can. And third, and this is the most important part, you just shut up and listen.
Let their needs, their problems, their feedback dictate everything you build next.
You know, this flies in the face of everything we're taught, right? Haste makes waste. But in the startup world, the opposite is often true. Waiting is waste. The history of successful companies is just filled with stories of founders who built their first prototype in a caffeine-fueled sprint that lasted maybe a week or two. Speed is a massive, massive advantage.
And hey, if you need a concrete example that proves this principle in the most spectacular way, let's talk about the launch of Reddit.
3 weeks. Just think about that. That's how long it took the founders of Reddit to go from a blank page to a live website. I mean, some teams spend that long just designing a logo. And in that time, they built the foundation of what would become one of the biggest sites on the entire internet. So what did that 3-week version even look like? It was brutally simple. I mean, it was basically just the list of links. Users could submit them, and they could vote on them. That's it. There were no human editors, no complex algorithms, no fancy features. It was the absolute bare minimum required to be useful and interesting. And guess what? It was more than enough to get started.
So this brings us to our final section, from launch to growth. How does that tiny, imperfect first launch turn into a massive, thriving company? It's all about creating what's called a flywheel effect.
I absolutely love this metaphor. It's like a steam catapult in an aircraft carrier. The goal of that first launch isn't to get to cruising altitude. No way. The goal is just to get you airborne. Barely. It just provides enough initial momentum, just enough lift so that you can start to accelerate under your own power. That's what a fast launch does for you.
And this is the flywheel. This is the engine. It starts with the launch. That allows you to learn from real users. That learning then tells you what to build next, which ensures you're making something people actually want. And when you build what people want, you get more users, which means you get more learning, and the whole cycle just starts to spin faster and faster. This feedback loop is the engine of startup growth. So, we'll end with this thought. Your brilliant idea, that thing you've been perfecting in secret for so long, it's just a hypothesis. It's an educated guess. And every single day that you don't launch, you're the only one testing it. So the question is, are you going to keep grading your own homework? Or are you going to let your users, the only judges that actually matter, give you the real score?